the preciousness of a person is measured in terms of their life, in terms of their faithfulness to God, in terms of their obedience to his call. And we can all think of people who've faithfully achieved that over the years of their lives. And certainly Chris achieved that, and certainly she is precious to God. If something is precious, you look after it. You know that there are some things that, if you lose them, you can have a kind of an attitude, well, I'm sad to lose it, but I'll just buy another. But there are other things you don't think like that at all. You say, no, that's irreplaceable. If I lose that, there is nothing that can replace it. And I believe that's how God sees us. And when the time comes for us to leave this life, God says, you are precious. You are so precious that I'm going to look after you for eternity. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful saints. I think it's always important to bear in mind what God values, because sometimes what people value may not be the same. People may value the fact that someone has a great reputation and maybe masses of money, maybe written loads of books. There are sort of things like that, and people consider those people to be valuable, very valuable. But God doesn't value things in that way. I've often said, when I stand before the Lord, he's not going to talk to me about what I've done. That's irrelevant, because what is most important to God is our relationship with him. That's what enables us to be described as precious, because what we've done, if we've done anything of value, well, it's because God led us to do it. It's because he inspired it. He was in what was happening. He anointed and he brought things together. So he gets all the glory. There's nothing to be claimed by us. But the Lord loves faithful service. You remember how Jesus told the story of the parable of the talents, and the way in which the emphasis is for the one who's used the talents that's been given, used them wisely and well. What is the accolade? What is the resounding sort of greeting? Well done, good and faithful servant. You're not being rewarded because you had 10 and this other one only had 1. That's not the basis of the reward. The basis of the reward is that you have been faithful. You've done what you were called to do. And I shall have the opportunities to speak about Chris at more length when we have a Thanksgiving service for her in Bilderston at the end of October. But what I want to just say now is faithfulness, obedience to God is something that he highly values. This is something that means so much to him. And this is why, if we were watching heaven and it was like a reward ceremony, you know how there can be these places, these big events, and rewards are being given out. And I think, I don't know if this is literally true, but I just have the sense of like a reward ceremony. And if you're watching in the heavenly sphere, I think there will be some people who'll be brought forward, and there'll be this immense shout of joy, and you'll look and say, who were they? Never knew them. They never wrote a book. Nothing sort of struck the headlines. They weren't on television or anything. But God says, I saw their faithful service. And these are not always people who are in the public eye. These are people like some of our wonderful prayer warriors who have spent hours and hours on their knees calling on God. No one knows who they are, or hardly anyone, but God sees and God honours their incredible humility and faithfulness. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. One of the things I recall very much when I was a young Christian was the story of the 5 young missionaries who flew into Ecuador and into an area where the Auca tribe lived and ruled. And it's an extraordinary story of how they gave their lives because they just had such a conviction that God was calling them to reach the Auca people. And they flew in a small plane and they landed that plane, and within a short time the Auca Indians, they killed them all. They were speared and they died on the beach. And the story rang out through the Christian world. 5 young men, families losing a father at a very early age, all sorts of sadness and grief and wonderment. That they sang, "We rest on thee, our shield and our defender." And they were just committed, and they'd said, if necessary, we will die. They didn't know it was going to happen, but that's what did happen, and they lost their lives. Well, that story lived with me. All my Christian life still lives with me today. And one of the things that God did was he, again, opened a door for me to go to Ecuador. This was not through someone in London. This, in fact, was through someone who shared with me what they felt God was saying when Elaine and I were in New Zealand. And someone just had that sense, God's going to open the door for you to go to South America and indeed to Ecuador. Well, God did open that door, and it was possible to go, and it was great to be able to go and share. But we passed by the area where there was a tiny, tiny airport, which was the very one that those 5 young men flew from into the jungle where they were killed. And one of the things that really struck me, I just felt God speak to me and say, yes, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. But then there was something else, and I just felt God say, and their death is precious to me still. Now, I can't remember exactly what year I went to Ecuador. It was, I think, in the late 1990s. So a very long time after their death in 1956. But what again was striking me was that the way that someone is precious to God is not just for a little while, for eternity we will remain precious to God. Why can we be precious to God? Why can we be valued? Why is it that the angels rejoice over one sinner who repents? Where's that all come from? What's that all about? Well, what it's all about is that Jesus Christ, God's precious Son, left heaven to come to earth. And he went to the cross and he died in shame. And he was, we know, vilified. the hatred, the anger, the swearing, the cursing, and the beating and the whipping and nailing him to a cross. But Peter says, the blood that was shed is precious blood. We've been redeemed through the sacrifice of the most precious one who's ever lived, Jesus Christ, alive today. He truly is very, very precious. And it's our joy and it's our privilege to be able to share even today, Jesus Christ, the precious Son of God, died for us sinners who in God's sight are just full of weakness and sin and rebellion and so many things that are evil and wrong. Yes, compared to a holy God, we're all vile sinners. But what we appreciate is that Jesus loved us and gave himself for us. And he loved us so much that he died to save us from our sin. Yes, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. And so as you mourn the loss of a dear brother or sister today, as you think about saints who once worshipped with you in your churches and who now are in glory, we rejoice that before God they are precious because they did what the Lord called them to do. And we have been made precious by the fact that Jesus valued us so highly, he was prepared to sacrifice so much that we might come to know the living God. May God bless you and encourage you as you think through this word. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Amen.